The short-term rental now, it is about monthly stays for guests relocating or families that are renovating their villas that need somewhere.
What would you say to someone who's thinking about buying here in terms of the areas?
Dubai Hills performs very, very well for us. JVC, Business Bay has been really a good performer. A lot of owners out there, they always expect areas like Marina, downtown Palm Jumeirah to be the higher occupancy. But it's not, because that's when you've got guests transitioning, and to have back-to-back for a full month, it doesn't happen.
If you rent your property out long term, you will have a tenant in it, and that tenant can automatically renew their tenancy contract every year. What that means also is that if you have a long-term tenant, it's unlikely that they will be paying the market rate for much more than a year. Whereas with short term, you can obviously fluctuate it on a month-by-month basis depending on demand.
You just don't have those restrictions on short-term leasing, and that is what is so appealing. I say to my team, ask them what is exactly included in your management fee, because I guarantee that their services are not what we're offering. It's the hardest thing. The tenant wants the cheapest price and the landlord wants the highest price. And we're in the middle to keep everybody happy, and that's tough.
Welcome to the Stephen Leckie podcast, and I am joined today by a long-term colleague, Emma Campbell, who is the managing director
Of
House and House Holidays. Thank you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited.
Good. I'm excited because we're gonna pump you for lots of information
Yeah.
about the short-term holidays, Airbnb model, etc. And I'm going to start off immediately with anyone who doesn't know you. Tell me about Emma Campbell and how you got into this business.
Wow. Okay. I wouldn't actually say it was on my radar, but when I moved across to Dubai, I kind of fell into real estate, the short-term industry. It was just legalized. It's going back now 10 years ago, 2015. Not a lot of landlords, investors, residents really knew about the concept of short-term. It was very fresh and new. And I just started to enjoy it and realize, actually, I don't want to necessarily go down the road of the usual real estate and leasing and sales. I liked short-term leasing. I liked the holidays. So it interested me. And then I continued, left the current company that I was at, and was very lucky to find James, Simon and Luke, and connected with the three of them. And that's when we decided that we would set up House and House Holidays.
And that was, what, 7 years ago, I think?
7 years ago now.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember it. Did you approach them with a business idea, or how did it work?
Actually, very randomly, I used to live in Singapore before I moved to Dubai, and there was a lady that knew the guys. She'd recruited some employees for them. And she said, I know that they're interested in setting up short-term leasing, but they don't really know the direction or how to take it forward. And she knew that I had done it in Dubai. So she connected us, and that's when we met, and they were like, we really want to do it. And I was like, so do I. And I kind of did a bit of a business plan, managed to pull it out the bag, and here we are 7 years later, successful, very
Yes.
successful.
So, I mean, obviously things have changed. I know that the market's changed a lot in the last 7 years, but in your market, the short-term holiday lets, how's that changed? What's the big changes you've seen?
Wow. The demand, the supply, my competitors, the shift of the target audience of who comes and stays. I'd say it's transformed a lot, but I believe all in the right ways. It's now, we're regulated a lot more, so all the laws around it has enforced kind of all the big companies to really improve. So yeah, it's changed a lot.
Yeah, I did a video recently about this. We talked about the new changes, the new legislation that's just recently come in, where they're getting a lot stricter What does that look like?
One of the biggest things that happened in 2025 was on Airbnb, you now needed your own permit, your DTCM permit via Dubai Tourism. So there were a lot of individual owners that were obviously managing their properties themselves. So they would take their own photos, put it online, and they didn't actually need legally to advertise a unit permit on the listing. And then Airbnb last year said, we need to start regulating this. So now every single listing on the portal needs to have a unit permit, which is a little bit costly for an individual landlord and a lot of admin, should we say, or B, again, they come to a management company like ourselves, and then we can take care of that for them. So it was actually for us, to be honest, Stephen, it was
Good,
great.
good.
Yeah, really, really good.
Got the amateurs out of the picture.
Yeah, definitely.
So tell me about this company that you're running, House and House Holidays. Number of properties, number of people working, the way that you do things differently at House and House Holidays to these other competitors.
Okay, so now our portfolio range is probably circa around the 500 mark and around 30 employees behind that. It's grown a lot. I believe, my God, everybody could sit here and say, this is why I think I'm the best in the market. Listen, there's a lot of great competitors out there, but I do believe, which is something I wanted to do from the beginning, a lot of personal touch in the services that we provide. Everything from 24-hour check-in, the guest relations are running around at 2, 3 in the morning and during the day. We have our own in-house maintenance team, which again helps because they're on call if we need to coordinate maintenance. Housekeeping as well. I'm very proud the general service that we provide. And also we're lucky we're under the House and House group and being able to utilise, people like yourself that have investors out there that they can buy from yourself and then obviously keep it under one roof and we can short term.
So when I come up to your office upstairs in building 3,
I love it. I love it to see your
I
face.
see about 10 people there. So where are the other 20? What are they doing?
Out and about constantly. So everything from, we have various, I guess, mini teams all within the department. So we have the guest relations for the guests. We have the account managers looking after the landlords. So they might be out having a coffee with a landlord or, generally looking at the performance of the property. Then we have the business development side where we have the ladies and gentlemen that are speaking to the owners and explaining about the concept and why they should be, onboarded for the short-term portfolio. And then behind that, obviously, we have inventory clerks that are going out and about and they're doing the inventory, the maintenance. So we have a photographer, videographer, marketing, the accounts that work, very hard. So it's actually, I didn't realise when I set it up how hard operationally it was going to be.
I can imagine because you have grown a behemoth, really.
Yeah.
When I talk to investors on the phone who are overseas and I say, what's your strategy? Do you want to rent it out long-term, short-term, etc.? Oh, I don't want to do short-term. Tell me why they should do short-term and what's different about short-term, because in their head, it's the Airbnb model, one night parties, people wrecking their apartments, to horror stories, which they see on YouTube or social media or in the news even. So what's different about House and House and how do you manage that misconception?
I think there was a lot of horror stories, especially, as I said, going back 10 years ago before it was regulated as much. And when landlords just saw it as an Airbnb 1 night, 3 night party goers, yes, may come and disrespect the property. So I do understand because I do think it did go on. Well, it did go on, there's no hiding that. However, I think, House and House Holidays and the short-term rental now, it is for not just for 1 night stays, it's for, we spoke a lot about this and we'll go into it in more detail, about monthly stays, for the audiences, for guests relocating or families that are renovating their villas that need somewhere. Half our office, probably comes and stays on monthlies until their visa is done. Their Emirates ID is there. So I think we were very good at educating landlords and actually explaining to them that, okay, take a step back for a minute and let's not focus on just that one clientele. And let's look at actually short-term leasing is for so many different types of people in different types of situations. So I think that we were very good at conversing that. And I think I've also had a lot of experience that when I set this up, we have certain rules and guidelines that I wanted to follow to try and segregate away from the people that may cause us those issues in the properties.
So monthly rentals.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing because that's what I have to explain to a lot of the investors.
Exactly. Yeah.
I understand there's newcomers, they don't have, etc. But I'm seeing also this fact is that a normal tenancy is for a year, and you have to commit to a year. You have to furnish the apartment in many
Yeah.
cases. And people are coming here and they're not sure whether they're going to stay. They're not sure whether they're really going to live here. But also there's a lot of people just want the convenience of
Yeah.
having a fixed outgoing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And are you seeing a lot of that? What sort of percentage of all the 500 or so properties do you think are on the monthly rentals?
It changes down to the season. Obviously, you have your high season, which kind of runs like September, October to kind of April-ish time. And then in the summer, as we know, when it's ridiculously hot, that's when our tourists go down. So that's our low season. So low season, my God, 90% of the portfolio will be on monthlies. But then in the higher season, I'd probably say it's more like 70. So it does change, but still it goes to show you that majority of our business is monthlies.
Hmm.
Now, if you ask me why, I would probably say two reasons. First reason is, again, like I say, a lot of landlords, obviously, their preference as well. They love to have monthlies, as so do we. You've got 100% occupancy across the month. You have operationally wise, I'll be honest, we have 1, 2, 3 guests to look after within that 1 month period for inventory checks, housekeeping, etc. But also being under the House and House group, the leads that are incoming, we have a lot of guests, of monthly guests, because we're in real estate. And they may contact the long-term leasing department, and as soon as they say, well, you can't have an annual lease yet because you don't have your Emirates ID, they would then transfer the lead across to our department, and we would obviously sell them on a short-term basis. So other companies and competitors don't have that because they're just on the international channels and they're not actually got, a big brand behind them that has those leads coming in.
So that comes down to what you're explaining in terms of getting some full for a month, etc. What as a company, I see it at the beginning of every month in our company meeting. We talk about the stats and we talk about statistics and we talk about the fact that you've onboarded this amount of properties.
Yeah.
And you also come up with a figure, which is your occupancy rate for that month.
Yeah.
What is that sort of, where does that sit?
Look, averagely across the year, I'd say we fall on about 80%. Now, in certain areas where there are more monthly guests, obviously your occupancy is pushed up because you've got a consistent monthly tenant that is renewing and renewing. So particularly in areas like the JVC area, Dubai Hills as well, we push 90, 95% because of those reoccurring tenants. And actually, again, a lot of owners out there, they always expect areas like Marina, downtown Palm Jumeirah to be the higher occupancy. But it's not, because that's when you've got guests transitioning, and to have back to back for a full month, well, it doesn't happen. Anyone that says that, you're lying. You're always going to get gaps.
Of course.
So the occupant, but roughly I'd say 80% across the year.
When investors come in, they say, I want to do short term, but I only want downtown. I only want Dubai Marina.
Yeah.
I want seafront. I want waterfront. And I tell them, well, that's not actually how it works here. Yes, those are good areas to do, but you're not necessarily going to get good occupancy rates.
Correct. Exactly.
So what would you say to someone who's thinking about buying here in terms of the areas, and which different areas are attracting different types of businesses?
Yeah. First of all, and I mean, this is probably what you do, Stephen, is you really find out with the short-term leasing if they're going to want to use it themselves. because if they want the flexibility of using the property for themselves or their friends or their family, then obviously, that may direct them into a different area, somewhere that they're going to want to come and stay, which potentially might be the downtown and the marina area. But if it's solely on a revenue basis and they want consistent occupancy, then I would be looking. Dubai Hills performs very, very well for us. JVC, because of the expats relocating across. Business Bay has been really a good performer. I think maybe because the accessibility to downtown, the prices have been very good. It's up, with the new Peninsula office there. That it seems to be holding a very strong occupancy and a lot of attraction there. It really does depend, I would say, on really finding out what the client wants, if they want to use it.
I tell people, look, even places like Town Square, which seems like a long way away, and people say, oh, that's too far away. Why would anybody want to do Airbnb or a short-term holiday lets? But I'm understanding that they get some really good rates in comparison to what the property cost. So your yields are actually really high in places like that. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that, yeah. Obviously, you're the expert in regards to the yields, etc. But I was always very like, oh, they're too far. Even myself, personally, I was like, so far out. To Mac Hills too. It's on the other side of the planet. But pushing aside my own where I would particularly want to live, you're right. I think the cost of the purchase price, and then actually everyone's getting pushed out because the prices are so high. So when everyone gets pushed out, obviously, regardless of whether it's annual leasing or short-term leasing, families, couples will then look further out, and actually the prices, as in regards to the purchase price, they're still in demand for out there. So yeah, anywhere. Arabian Ranch is 3, Damac Hills 2, Town Square.
Okay, so studios, 1 beds, 2 beds, 3 beds, penthouses, townhouses,
Right.
and villas. What's your say? What's your take on those as far as short term?
Okay, if you ask my personal pick, I would go either studio 1 beds or villas, kind of townhouses. The reason being is studio and 1 beds, like I say, a lot of people moving across or couples, the holiday makers, 2 people, they always seem to perform really well. 2 bedrooms, you are looking for families, obviously, but you are restricting the monthly guests as much because, like I say, when people are relocating over here or they're corporate travellers, they're not necessarily going to be picking the larger size. I would stay away from the 3 and the 4 bed penthouses, etc. Tends to attract party goers. Okay, your target audience is less. You're looking for a larger crowd. Usually, again, more touristy. But the villas perform very, very well because it's families.
And do you have a shortage of any particular type of property?
Villas. I think, again, because you've been on the other end of the phone when someone goes, well, why do I short-term a villa, out there, a villa in those areas, Town Square, Damac, Arabian Ranches, really? As a holiday home? No one wants to come over there, but they're missing out because, as we said, this market is for short-term leasing, which is families. We have people calling saying, I'm renovating my villa. I need somewhere 1 month. And is their project going to be finished on time?
Nope. I did the same thing. Do you remember? I stayed in one of your apartments for a month while my apartment was being refurbished.
So I'd say villas. Look, operationally, they're quite hard to manage. Very hard.
Why is that?
You've normally got a garden, a pool, so we're connecting with that. The cleaning, the maintenance, the AC units, and you've got a whole family, in that using that villa daily. So of course, operationally, it's quite hard to manage, as opposed to a studio where your business traveller is probably out at work all day.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
You don't really talk to people about yields, but it's interesting because there's yields, and then there's the flexibility of
Mm.
doing short term. One of the reasons why obviously people buy property in Dubai is to make money, or they want to stay there themselves.
Yeah.
But also there's the flexibility of owning a property, having someone in short term, and then being able to sell it. Certainly my strategy, yeah, is to...
It's amazing for that.
Yes.
The flexibility
Mm.
is what I get my team to sell for,
So
because
can you explain a bit about that, what that means?
okay, so to have the flexibility where that unit is not locked in to a 12-month lease, where you can sell the property as and when the market fluctuates up, or they need to get their money out, maybe to invest in multiple more.
Mm.
They can do that so easily with short term, and I think it's such an attraction. And the minute we say to an investor, if you want to sell your property with us next week and a cash to cash buyer, we will make sure that that property is vacant on transfer for you. And they just don't have that option with an annual lease.
No. What sort of notice period do you need to end a contract with you?
We do have some special terms for house. I mean, we are a 3-month termination period, but we will make it work for buyers and sellers within house and house. So as long as, look, we have to be fair to the client, okay? And in our client contract, we're 14 days notice, okay?
You mean client as in the
As in the tenant.
the tenant?
Yeah. So with the tenant, we are a 14-day notice. With our landlords, we do like to have 3 months notice because generally we take bookings for a longer period. But we do make sure that we can make it work for everybody. Because usually, again, if a landlord can sell his property and come out of our contract on good terms, we're gaining business in the future because he's going to use us again. He's going to say, right, they were great. Again, I had the flexibility. And we'll make sure that if they sell to an end user, if they do, that end user will just take on the rental income for the amount of days that's left on the contract, so we can make it work.
Long-term rents in the market have come up a lot in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And I would expect that there is a smaller gap between long-term rental income and short-term rental income.
There is.
So why would I go short-term rather than long-term in today's market?
You would do that because, as we said, you've got the flexibility as well as the revenue. So yes, you're right, the gap is definitely smaller. I mean, years and years ago when I'd done this, you could even get about 30% more years ago. Now, if I'm honest, 10, 15 max in certain areas. So you really need to do it for, yes, the revenue, but also the flexibility to sell, to use the property yourself, to not be locked into a tenant that's staying there for 12 months and longer. And you have the opportunity as well to be able to fluctuate the prices on a short-term leasing side, depending on what the market obviously is doing.
If you rent your property out long-term, you will have a tenant in it, and that tenant can automatically renew their tenancy contract every year until such time as you give them 12 months notice to move out because you're selling the property or that you want to move into it, or you need to do a major refurb. What that means also is that if you have a long-term tenant, it's unlikely that they will be paying the market rate for much more than a year.
That's correct.
Because we have what's called
we're a calculator.
where quite possibly the first couple of years you probably won't even be able to increase the rent. But after that, maybe 5%, possibly 10%. So actually, it doesn't make economic sense. Whereas with short term, you can obviously fluctuate it on a month-by-month basis depending on demand.
You just don't have those restrictions on short-term leasing, and that is what is so appealing. And that's what we're selling, to these investors is, we have to educate them on both. But what would you do? I know what I would do, and you know what you would do.
Every time, yeah.
To me, it's a no-brainer because of the restrictions that you have on the annual leasing. And, you can enjoy the property yourself if you want to come out and your friends and your family, whether it be a weekend or to have that option is a luxury as well as earning some revenue.
There is another thing, of course, is the property is being continually maintained and inspected.
Yeah.
One would expect. So you guys, it's not like you're leaving your property and you'd never see it for the next 3 to 5 years. Someone is going in there possibly in a weekly or monthly basis just to have a check it over, yeah? Clean it.
That's correct. So again, when we go back to what we were talking about with the horror stories of these tenants coming in for a couple of nights, and maybe trashing the property. I always on the flip side say to owners, well, you can have an annual tenant and they can do exactly the same, but you're not seeing it for a year.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's exactly the same, risk, if you like, to put it. But yet we're going in on every check-in and check-out, and the housekeepers are going in as well. And we're actually catching that maybe a lot earlier than what you would do after an annual tenant. So you don't know, let's be honest, you don't know kind of what clientele necessarily is going to be in the property, but certainly when it's managed, we are getting a look in.
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing the market go that way anyway. And I think there was even some talk in the press a couple of months ago where there were going to be a lot more monthly contracts, this annual contract thing, because anywhere else in the world, we're from the UK,
Yeah.
you don't rent a property on an annual basis. It's 6-month contract
Yeah.
and you pay monthly.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
Whereas here, you're paying 6 months, 3 months, even a year in advance.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So that's why short-term is also very attractive for both the tenant and for the landlord, in my opinion.
I'm going to fire some questions at you, Stephen, because
Sure.
it's always interesting for
Yes,
me
of course.
to actually know,
Go.
what do they ask you? What is the most popular question that they ask you when you say, what about short term?
So they always ask about the area that it should be in. They always have these preconceived ideas that it should be waterfront property, it should be the Palm Jumeirah, or it should be Emaar beachfront, etc.
Yeah.
That's one of the main things. A lot of people don't understand that actually JVC or Town Square or wherever, Dubai Hills Estate, might actually be a much better investment play than spending a lot of money on a property in downtown and then not necessarily getting the kind of yield that you could get in some of the cheaper areas. So that's it. Studios, obviously. Do I buy a studio for short term, long term, etc.? Well, it's not something that anybody's ever going to buy from you to live in it, but they are going to rent it short term.
Yeah.
And they tend to be cheaper, so the yields tend to be higher. So I think definitely that question about what kind of unit is very important to people.
Yeah.
They ask about the costs.
Yeah.
And the first question is, when I say, oh, actually we charge 20% and everybody else charges 20%, there are some people who charge 15%, but hang on a minute. What we do is a little bit special in that we have people who greet our guests 24/7. It's not, we don't have key boxes on the doors. People don't just arrive off the aeroplane and fiddle around and trying to get into the building, because sometimes security doesn't let you in, etc. But our guys are there on the scene to greet you. I mean, I think a lot of people have this preconceived idea because obviously there's the Airbnb model. You've got all this stuff on the press about, such and such happened. This is my house has been wrecked. I've seen it on YouTube. Really. We don't have that problem, do we? I mean, I don't think we have that problem in long term, really. I don't really hear horror stories about people mistreating properties, long-term rental. So I don't know, short-term, do you have that?
I mean, we're very good at vetting the guests, I believe, as a company. One of the reasons why is something I learned, in my experience, is we're quite strict on the platforms that we use. So Airbnb, I do love Airbnb, okay? I love it because you can view their reviews, you can communicate with the guests. They rate you as a host and you rate them as a guest. So I do feel like they respect it like a home on Airbnb. There's other platforms that aren't necessarily my favorite because the team don't get to have that communication first, which I think is important. Obviously seeing their passport copies, making sure that, when they say that a couple's coming on holiday and while we do personal check-ins, a couple turn up, not a family of 8 people that want to live in a 1-bedroom apartment.
Yeah.
So I think that's very important, which again is something that I value within our services. As you said, people do say, oh, 20% management fee.
Mm.
Well, such and such company, it ranges from 15% and up. And I always go back to them and I say to my team, ask them, what is exactly included in your management fee? Because I guarantee that their services are not what we're offering. And then when you actually dive deeper, some of them are only advertising on international portals. So they're not on Property Finder, Bayou, Diviso, or the local platforms that we get a huge amount of leads for monthly guests. Okay, so they've all of a sudden they've blocked that clientele out. Some of them don't do the coordinate the maintenance and the housekeeping, which again is all covered within our management fee, and it's not in others. So I always say, go and do your homework, or we'll help you do your homework and actually understand what's included.
A couple of things I've heard from people who have done short term with other companies is they don't pay me. It takes 3 months, 4 months to pay me, 3 or 4 months to pay me if they pay me.
That's a horror story that we get a lot. Yeah.
And also, they're no longer around.
Yeah.
Their contracts, they're non-existent. They just don't mean anything. There's no real service. It's just, we just want your property. We'll rent it out, etc., etc. And I think there's a lot of cowboys, isn't there? There's a lot of cowboys doing it.
There is.
Sorry to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's bees around the honeypot, isn't it? It's a great business. I know, for instance, you say 20%, but you're paying some of these portals a lot of money, aren't you?
Yeah. A lot of money, especially when we want to be, top of the portals when it comes to the local ones for sure. And, the international channels have their own fees.
But yeah, actually managing the portals.
Yeah.
I know that on the leasings department, we have how many people just managing listings, yeah?
Yeah. So, it's a huge amount. And I always also as well, when there's a lot of, and you'll probably speak to investors that go, oh, I'll just do it myself. I can manage that. Good luck. It's tough. If you think you're going to be in another country, be able to manage your property overseas, I'm sorry. But unless you've got a good few people in Dubai that are going to be doing check-in, check-out, checking the condition, advertising for you, it's tough. You need a company. You need to be regulated, for sure.
People expect a lot from us. Yeah? They expect a lot from me. They expect a lot from you. What do you think people's expectations where they're just over-expecting? What can't you do for people? Do you know what I mean?
I can't tell you that we're never going to get a tenant that in some way or form causes a slight bit of damage to the property. I can prevent it as much as possible and make sure that I communicate if anything's gone wrong to the owner. But can I sit here and promise that you're never, ever gonna have an incident of somewhat? Just like an annual lease, you can never promise. So I do see a lot of competitors out there that do overpromise. I can't promise a fixed revenue every month if you have a mortgage to pay for. I can't, but what I will make sure is that as best as I can, fluctuate the rates up and down to get you the occupancy and the revenue that we can achieve at the time. Yes, so I think there's a lot of expectations, and it is hard, I'll be honest. We're managing the hardest thing, I think, in the business is to manage the client or the tenant's expectations, as well as the landlord's expectations, and be able to meet in the middle.
Yes.
It's the hardest thing. The tenant wants the cheapest price, and the landlord wants the highest price. And we're in the middle to keep everybody happy. And that's tough.
So when you stay in a hotel, the battery in the remote for the TV goes, you can just make a phone call. Do people phone you up about things like that? Change my light bulb, the light bulb's gone.
Oh my God, Stephen, if I could sit here and we had more time, the stories are incredible. And again, we do try and let them know that we're not a hotel. You don't have room service. We're not going to carry your bag. Actually, we to be fair, a lot of the team do help carry the bags up there. But yes, there is a lot of expectations in this market for a certain service, and we try as much as possible. And we do get those phone calls for ludicrous requests.
Can you give me a couple?
A few ludicrous requests. Okay, we have people saying, "Can you come and feed my goldfish, please? I'm going to work and you need feeding. I'm going away for a night or two." You've had that with a few of their animals. We have requests of what they would like delivered at some crazy times in the evening. So yeah, there's different things.
And what about what people leave behind? I bet they leave their stuff behind. Have you, well, most only, I remember you telling me once you found a cash counting machine.
Yes.
Something, yeah?
Yeah.
That someone left that behind. I mean, a proper professional cash counting machine.
With bicycles, they leave a bike behind. We've had people leaving, laptops, and you know what? I think a few people deliberately. We do get a lot of like exercise equipment that's been left. I think when they're a monthly tenant, sometimes people, obviously, they're set up home for a brief period. And then they think, I'm not taking that back on the plane, a couple of weights and a yoga mat, for example. Or yeah, there's they leave some items behind for sure.
Emma, thank you so much for your time today. If people want to get in touch with you at House and House Holidays, what's the best way to do that?
Best way, look, go online onto our website, which is www.houseandhouseholidays.com. Or just get in touch with you, Stephen, and you send it across to us. We're happy to always speak to your clients and investors. And I think, what we've said today is really trying to educate these investors of exactly why short-term leasing is such a good concept for them.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Emma Campbell.